Rolling sound, quiet. Here we go. Reading. 126.7. And starting right when action. Everybody, welcome to the Film Talk for the Lone Star Film Festival. This Film Talk is actually going to be for the day after Halloween. Feature film about two lifelong friends who must unravel the events that lead to a dead girl in the bathtub a day after Halloween party, or at least that's what it says there. Gentlemen, the two attractive gentlemen, actually, that are joining me here today is Danny Schluck. He's a producer. Wave for me so we know which one you are. Bam, there he is. And Danny, and Chad Ostrom, the director. He's the that guy. Great. Guys, thanks so much for joining us on this Film Talk. How you doing today?
Pretty good. How about you?
Doing all right. I get a chance to talk film with a couple of fellow filmmakers, so that's always a pretty good day, I'll be honest with you. So first things first, as one of the programming directors, I obviously got to see your film. I very much enjoyed it. It was a fun departure from some of the films that we get to see. You know, I'm sure that you know comedies don't come up very often, and especially a good one doesn't come up very often in the independent world. So congratulations on succeeding and getting it done. That's always the hardest part.
Our film school kind of thing where every film school has to end with suicide somehow, your first film or something. So we thought we'd do a departure.
So just a couple quick questions for you based on the film itself. We could always talk about where the story came from because it's really unique. So I guess, how about that? Because to me, you know, it starts off as it's a breakup movie, really, that has a couple of twists and turns in it. Do you? So neither one of you wrote it, but do you have any input on where that might have? That guy.
I wrote it, actually.
That's not in my notes, guys. Everyone's fired.
Man, he's the writer, star, and producer. He's kind of a big deal.
That's why you understood the character's nuance perfectly. Okay, so tell me a little bit about that, Danny, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, it was always the general idea of slightly combining two genres. Definitely, like, we're both big From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah.
And, I mean, there's a literal connection of that now, but also it was kind of having, it's kind of murderous thing, but also, like, you know, a lot of jokes and like flashing back to the party, and it kind of just like evolved from there. I mean, we were trying to get this made for a long time, so the script evolved. Like, it wasn't, you know, it was always this murder and unraveling it, but like it wasn't always Halloween, it wasn't always at a drive-in, it was always like a party and a murder. And as things evolved, it's like, well, it's getting later, we should say it's at Halloween, then we put people in masks, and then
less extras,
and then, you know, I got in good with this drive, and I'm like, holy shit, let's have, you know, the party here, and
which is kind of great. I mean, it perfectly lends itself to a Halloween movie, and we're coming up. It's, you know, we're in the Halloween season-ish now, you know, in November. So I can see that your film becoming a Halloween classic, where people are like, oh man, it has that sense. And as a filmmaker, you know, independent world, you're always hoping for, like, well, if we could always get like that little, so that turns out, in my opinion, I think that's a great choice.
I totally agree. I mean, there were definite benefits that happened, and that did enter our head, because it's always like, I mean, yeah, what you said up front with comedy, not a lot of comedies age pretty quickly. Like, there's a lot of there's reasons why you don't see them. But you're like, it's no one's in our movie that you know, but it's horror, it's Halloween. Like, you know, if people have never seen a Halloween movie, like, like all of these movies eventually, like, I won't say ours is going to be like that, but like, this Halloween movies become beloved. I don't know how Hocus Pocus became so beloved, but now it's back out in theaters and everyone loves Hocus Pocus. So yeah, we thought Halloween was while a late-ish edition, it was a benefit to it.
Yeah. And it's, you know, the two characters are, you know, your character Danny is not lovable up front. He really isn't. You really come around to him, you know, towards the end, because you realize, you know, well, I do a little bit, because I feel like his heart was in the right place ultimately. Like, some of his methods might be a little crazy, but I feel like overall he's just, you know, he's insecure. We all have our things, but the character himself is flawed, sure, but I mean, I enjoyed him a lot. I tend to enjoy those characters that can be very polarizing, and I think he did a great job.
Yeah.
You talked about real quick, and this is probably more of a question for you, Chad. There's the flashing back and going back and forth. So one of the ways that you achieved that very well was the color grading. You made some really distinct choices in keeping it, bleached for what was apparently now, and then, kind of a typical color for the party-ish, and then, of course, the interrogation scenes, you go real CSI with it. But so was that intentional the whole time, or did that kind of come in the edit?
Is it funny that the compliment I've taken most to heart out? You said this could become a Halloween classic, and what I take most to heart is that you noticed the color grade. So, yeah, no, it's super intentional. I think originally it's not trying to overstate something, but it's dense, which doesn't always mean prophetic, but it's a dense story in regards to the flashbacks and where are we and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And I thought originally when Danny had the idea, it's this idea of rose-colored glasses for the past, and everything is kind of, even if it was shitty, it's kind of looked back on fondly. Mm-hmm. And just the expression cold light of day when you wake up, and it's kind of the ultimate example of just one's 20s or perhaps 30s, and you wake up and everything's a little less colorful and it's a little shittier, and we really wanted to apply. And so take that idea and you wake up and you check for your wallet and your phone if it's a long night, and what if those are all there, but the ultimate, there's a body. So it's kind of how much more gross can we make it feel present day and raw? And then cutting back to the further we cut back in time, the more saturation, the softer the overall feel is, mm-hmm. just for the idea of rose-colored glasses. So thanks for noticing that.
Yeah, well, no problem. I mean, it was well executed. I felt like it's, a lot of people, they'll grade, they'll do something, they'll try something like that, and they'll be unsuccessful in it because they're so, they're just hammering it. And it's just too obvious. Whereas with your film, we notice it, but you're not hammering it over the head, the audience over the head with it. So it subtly works very well. So congratulations.
When you do the more commercial, the further back you go in the more commercial kind of, rich feel, and then all of a sudden you have to come back to the present and you're like, shit, I have to just kind of torment this footage. Yeah, it's hard to deal with it sometimes.
Yeah.
Beautiful day. Why are we making it look like shit? Oh yeah.
Right. We shot it so nice. So one of my favorite things is like, this isn't exactly right, but the feel of the film definitely teeters on like that raunchy 80s sort of, not raunchy, that's the wrong word. You guys flirt with raunchy quite, like you straddle that line quite often in the film. Like it could go either way. It could either go too far or not quite far enough. So my question is, while shooting, did you guys ever, because I know that when you're on set, you have ideas and you try stuff. Did you guys ever try something or go somewhere and you went, oh, actually, let's go ahead and pull that back. We went a little too far on that one.
I mean, there were many iterations of the script. I would say each one started to lend itself a little more towards plot, and a little, maybe each time we lost one child that was maybe, it's important to note that the script also took place over the past X amount of years where things have changed, to put it lightly. So I think maybe some of the jokes you could get away with a while before. Maybe there's a sandwich board joke in the movie that if you don't know Die Hard with a Vengeance,
right,
super, super inappropriate. But
right,
that was one of those things where it's like, as we kept kind of looking at it, like, maybe there's a few many jokes at this particular group's expense. That was one of the ones where it sounds stupid to say drew a line in the sand. It's not our hill we want to die on, but it's like, you know what? This is this character. This is what he thinks would be funny. It is a direct lift from a movie. And it was, I don't know. I guess it's kind of speaking to the raunchy nature. I mean, there was a lot more at one point, but we felt like it became too much of a departure to just a scene was serving a joke maybe now and again, as opposed to serving the plot.
Yeah,
but he wrote it. He could probably.
The only time I really cringe at or joke or like think like, oh, I wish I did it differently, is when I kind of think it's more like lazy. Like, and there are a couple of jokes in there like that, like a couple of gay jokes or something. But there are also some really good gay jokes. But the only time I really like feel bad is like, that seems a little lazy to just go to that. But yeah, I mean, I also, comedy's weird. It's very subjective.
Well,
But I
that's the
heard
thing,
joke.
too, yeah.
That one definitely worries me the most, just because of where we're at in society. And yeah, like you said, like if you haven't seen that movie, you may not. You're like, wait, what is going on?
So true, so true. If you haven't seen the movie, it will be lost on you. But oh man, I love it. I think it's great. You know, it's like what? Like to me, it plays.
It's not about
So at least you got one guy.
The movie poster could be the scene where the one guy's holding the pumpkin with the carving and the other guy holding the sandwich board. And then
There
we just
it is. That's the poster. Yep, that's gonna do it. Couple. I know we're running low. Real quick, the countdown clock, was that in the script, or was that again something that came in the edit?
Yeah, that was in the script. One of those things, like I remember where I was at, like when it happened. I'm like, oh, we should do this, and it just kind of added an extra layer of, like, I won't say gimmick, but it's something. And
Sure, it helps move it.
So we did struggle with it was a thing of like, are we going to end up having this like in the actual movie? And like, so we did hem and haw before we even up to the point of definitely editing it. But I think, like, I don't know, it all for me, I like it. I mean, although I do think you could be like confused as to like, what is this counting down to? And like maybe not even know until
I mean, that's kind of the fun part to me too, is as an audience member, you're like, well, what the hell's that deal? Why do they keep showing that? You know, but then there's also some of the different like colors too. You know, we're finding out, and we're like, well, okay, so we're counting to something. What are we getting to? So I think it's a nice little reveal. I mean, I think you get it right before it's there, but you're like, okay, it's kind of how you, I think, intend for it. You know, the closer we get to the clock, you've seen enough of the movie. You're like, okay, I know what's going on.
Joke in there with the clock that comes up that probably gets missed quite a bit, but then the clock ends, and the clock resets when we're in the forest, and something else starts. So there's another. That was kind of a nice.
I mean, our movie is all about time, so it's just another thing. Like that time is a big thing in our movies. It's just like another time. Thing.
Yeah. The last question I got for you guys, the tone shift. There's definitely, like you talked about it before. You referenced. Thank you. Whew, yeah. And there's a tone shift in that, and this film has that as well. Do you recall, like, that could be a hard thing to accomplish? That could be a really, really fine thing to get, and I think you did it really well. Was there any tricks or anything that you pulled out to help you kind of bridge that, make sure that felt right when you shot it and then when you cut it? Anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of an aha moment, I think, because to make this as concise as possible, I think Danny wrote the first iteration of this thing 7 or 8 years ago. He was in Kansas and I was in New York, and we were going to go shoot a short, and it was straight. What do? You see Goodfellas, you see all these things, and there's a body, and they get rid of it. It can't be that easy. What would two guys do if they really had it? So then I expanded to a feature, and we were in the middle of it. We were getting ready to go. And at one point, we kind of just stopped and said, wait a minute, we're paying for this ourselves. We're asking for favors. We're cutting it. We're directing. We're everything. Why can't we do whatever we want? And that was kind of the moment of like, F it. Let's have this turn. And
nice.
The fun part is, I mean, by saying Dust Till Dawn, it probably gives it away pretty good, but we love the fact that you have this great caper film that you're super into, and then for no reason, it just throws this curveball at you. So there was just this idea of why the hell not?
We also never really had an ending we were like in love with either to begin with. So this was just the one like, well, at least this one's interesting. and it would be a challenge to like drop enough hints, but not hit him over the head.
But I like how it comes back to the lack of. For me, I was a big fan of the ending in the sense that like you do make this shift where it could go. The movie in reference, there's just battle after battle. Right before that happens, it kind of brings it back to the dialogue, just like kind of slacker mentality of the whole film.
For sure. That's how the film starts.
We've afforded lots of vampire fights, we promise.
It felt like that's what's so interesting about the film is it feels like this summer feel-good slacker movie where you're just hanging out. It feels very Linklettery where you're just kind of hanging out. You're at the drive-in, a bunch of misfits hanging out, and then And then as slowly things start to get a little darker, and then really dark, and then it gets real interesting there at the end. It's a fun third act. It's a fun last 15 minutes or so, I think, is where the turn really happens. Well, guys, unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for the Film Talk today. Thank you guys so much for being here, being a part of the Film Talk and a part of the Lone Star Film Festival. Your film is awesome. For those of you who might be watching this who maybe haven't seen the film yet, do yourself and everyone you know a favor and go watch it. Once again, this is Danny Schluck, the producer, and Chad Ostrom, the director of The Day After Halloween. Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks for all your stuff, man. Appreciate it. Great interview.
For sure.
Let's look at the facts. We have a girl, currently deceased. We got a party full of people, watched you argue, as they often do. We got drugs, we got booze, and the only thing we know for sure about this girl, she currently resides in a tub. Oh, and of course the most damning piece of evidence, the vampire.
The vampire.
Vampire is what I was gonna say.
Sorry. I said, you ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight? Don't worry, I said that to all my prey.
She told me that she loved me, and like a fool I believed her from the start. She said she'd never hurt me, but then she turned around and broke my heart.